So I would like all of you to imagine Arizona having an ocean, and it being known as Arizona Bay. And I'm sure for many of you it's probably like, why wouldn't we want an ocean here in Arizona because it's so hot? Well, I'm here to tell you that that could one day probably be a reality because of fossil fuels. And it could create something like this. We have become so dependent on fossil fuels that it has actually been destroying our environments. However, through sustainability, it is possible that it could help prevent it. I've seen movies like 2012, and I've always been interested in like end of the world movies. I don't know why. And I wanted to look into it more to see if it was at all possible that it could happen in the future. And I've come to learn a lot, and I even wrote a paper about it. So today I'm going to tell you what fossil fuels are and how they trap our sun's rays, how it could lead to events like the rise in sea levels, and how sustainable alternatives like E. coli could possibly help to prevent it. So I'm sure you're all wondering, what are fossil fuels and what are they used for? Fossil fuels are the natural decomposition of organisms over the course of millions of years. So basically anything that was organic millions of years ago that was compressed and then we dug it up and it was brought to the atmosphere again. It includes things like coal, petroleum, and natural gas. We use it to power our cities, our factories, and our transportation. A byproduct of fossil fuels are greenhouse gases. And basically what greenhouse gases are, they're gases that trap our sun's rays, which makes it hotter. In a book, Race for Sustainability, by Ken Hickson, he states that if we do not fix our dependency on fossil fuels, then this will contribute more to greenhouse gases, which will then in turn damage our atmosphere and will bring about unheard changes in our climate. So it's true that greenhouse gases are necessary, however too much of it can actually be dangerous and can bring about catastrophic events like the climate change and extreme weather around the world, the decreased snow cover in the northern hemisphere, deglacialization in Greenland and Antarctica, which would then in turn threaten our sea life as well as put many animals at risk for extinction. Like you see here, polar bears barely surviving because they have nowhere else to go. And then it could also bring about the rise in sea level that could make Arizona Bay. So now you're probably wondering what's being done about it, right? Clean alternatives that could help because eventually fossil fuels will run out and we need something to keep powering our cities. And some of them that you may have heard of have been like Tesla, which is like electric cars, and solar power. Other ones include wind, hydrogen, and propane. And I want to focus a little more on propane. Propane is a byproduct of petroleum refining or natural gas, and has actually been recently discovered that it could be made through the manipulation of Escherichia coli. And basically, that's E. coli for short, and for those of you who don't know, it's a bacteria that it lives in our intestines, which means that we have easy access to it. According to Eric Hopton, who wrote the article, Human Gut Bacteria May One Day Fuel Your Car, he says that it's a logical replacement because it has a lower carbon content than traditional fossil fuels, and it emits 20% less greenhouse gases than unleaded petroleum. So for Dr. Patrick Jones from Imperial College in London, he says that this opens up possibilities for us for future sustainable products that could in turn one day eventually replace fossil fuels completely. So yeah, it's true that fossil fuels were once our friend, but have now become our biggest enemy. And if the amount of fossil fuels is not controlled, then we could one day see a world that is slowly becoming incapable of sustaining life. However, through sustainable alternatives like E. coli, we can one day see a world that could possibly be saved. Thank you.